Well, welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Corey Allen, and as always, I'm joined by my wife of 30 years, Pam. And on Sexy Marriage Radio, we're having regular conversations to help you cultivate the space between you and your spouse, be that the mental, emotional, physical, erotic, and spiritual spaces. We explore the wisdom and skills of the marriage and relationship world's most brilliant minds through in-depth conversations with authors, counselors, psychologists, professors, doctors, specialists, and, of course, Pam, members of the nation. Each episode explores topics every relationship faces and offers conversation starters or actions that you can use to propel life and marriage into more deeper and more meaningful conversations. So if you're new to the show and you're looking for a handy way to tell your friends about Sexy Marriage Radio, check out the episode starter packs. These are collections of our favorite episodes organized by topics, and they help new listeners get a taste of everything we do on the show. Go to smr.fm/starter. And if you got some feedback, let us know. If you want us to adjust something specific, send us a message by calling the show at 214-702-9565 or feedback@sexymarriageradio.com. So Pam, coming up today, we've got the regular version and the extended version like we always do. And on the regular version, we had an opportunity from an old resource that was actually introduced to many, many years ago in Sexy Marriage Radio. Called Our Intimate Choices. And it's a worksheet to go through to help have conversations about the various, what would you say, do's and don'ts that you're comfortable with as it pertains to your faith, your morals, and even just your comfort level. But
centered around your sex life.
Right, centered around your sex life. So it's a great conversation piece in conversation aid, communication aid, I think is the way they frame it. And so you and I went through this, and we're going to talk about the experience.
Yeah.
And now the extended content today, which is deeper, longer, and there are no ads, you can subscribe at smr.fm/academy. We just finished No Nut November. And I'm going to let that just kind of hang out there for a little bit.
Did you and I finish it, or is it just that it just passed by?
I don't think you and I participated. December. We weren't official participants that I am aware of.
Yeah, so the phraseology, I'd say clarify the phraseology.
Well, for that, people are going to have to tune into the extended content today. Right, but we're going to talk about, it's an annual thing that has started years ago and has kind of become a bigger popular thing online of where you take the whole month of November and no masturbation to ejaculation is basically what it was talking about.
Okay.
And so I'm going to propose, what if that's actually dangerous? So all that's coming up right after this. I'll say, so fumble on that one. So before we get started on Our Intimate Choices worksheets that we work through, it's the holiday season. And so I'm curious, I came across this on the intro webs this past week that was just talking about holiday etiquette as it pertains to travel and your sex life.
Okay.
Right. And so one of the questions, there were several different questions that were posed, and then some experts that they used for this article chimed in with their thoughts. And so I'm curious what you think about this. Is it rude to have sex in someone else's home as an overnight guest?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm curious why anyone would think that would be rude. I guess how you go about your sex life might.
Absolutely.
Don't be intrusive on someone else's sleep.
Right, because walls can be thin in some homes, particularly some of the childhood homes we may have grown up in. There can be this idea
creaky
of,
beds.
Ooh, we get a chance to go back to the house I grew up in. I'm going to just wear that room out finally. You know, that can be a thread.
Could be.
Of some of the thoughts. And there also could be, if you're bringing in a suitcase of paraphernalia that you're going to be using, and it's like, oh, you guys brought a lot of bags. Yeah, we did. You know,
well,
really.
Who cares about the paraphernalia if it's not being flaunted in someone's face, quite honestly.
Fair. But the main premise being be respectful of your surroundings.
So what did their experts say?
That was the biggest one, is just like, be mindful of the etiquette. They agree it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. But be mindful of your etiquette.
Yeah.
If you're normally a little more loud and robust in your lovemaking, we'll tone it down a little bit.
Wouldn't that be the same even if everybody was coming to your house? I mean, if I have nobody else in the house other than the two of us, and we're usually quite robust in our lovemaking.
Right.
and I've got family coming to town.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
be,
but sometimes
be respectful
people.
of other people coming
Well,
into my
okay,
house
but yeah,
too.
sometimes on that thread though, I think some people would be like, they're coming to my house, so I think people
Well,
can take
that's
different
one
stances on that.
attitude to have. As we always say to our kids, look at your surroundings.
Yes, be aware of your surroundings.
Be aware of your surroundings. And what statement do you want to make about
Right.
yourself?
Right. And yeah, so I think, but it's an interesting conversation because I think that every single one of us needs to have in our repertoire, I think, the ability to experience tender, loving sex. It's a little more intimate, not as exaggerated, possibly.
Yeah.
Right. But you can still have some really good encounters with one another. Absolutely. So the next question was, are more babies conceived during the holidays?
Oh, I have no idea.
Actually, there are.
Really?
Yeah, because, well, there's two different factors. One, holidays is typically a universal, people get a lot of time off.
Yeah, so vacation time.
So you're together a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And then the second one is there's a lot more percentage of darkness in your days. So you're home more inside. And it's colder, and so you're
in
inside
the northern
more.
Hemisphere.
True. Well, that's a fair point. But they do talk about that in July, there's an element of a little bit mini baby boom, if you will.
June, July. This would have to be September, October.
Right. You're right. I just looked down and saw that because they're talking about the southern hemisphere, actually, because that's where the reverse is true in the southern hemisphere.
Okay. June, July, that's when they have the bigger baby
Of course,
boom.
my math wife is going to, wait, that does not add up. Yeah, I are a math whiz,
and
right?
anybody else out there who knows how to add
count.
Months,
you were just going to say count.
Right.
And then the last question, do sex toys make good stocking stuffers?
That's pretty funny because where do you open your stockings, right?
Right.
Who are you surrounded with when you
and the advice here
things?
was discretion matters on how it's presented.
Yeah.
And what you provide. And obviously this doesn't necessarily just mean for extended families. It can mean for a spouse, right? You could get it for a spouse.
Sure.
It's not necessarily talking about, I'm going to get what I'm getting my parents this year for Christmas, babe?
But are we opening our stockings with our, 15 and 16-year-olds?
Right. But here's the one thing that I thought was great, that if you want to add some fun to your bedroom repertoire, fantastic, right? That can be a fun gift. But if your spouse has said they have no interest in certain toys, giving that will be ignoring their wishes, right? There's this element of, I'm going to do it even though you said I'm not interested.
Right.
So even no matter how big of a bow you put on it, it still wouldn't be a good gift.
So to go back to it, I say, yes, it would be a good stocking stuffer, but it's back to the keep in mind, where do you open your stockings?
And who you're giving it to.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think there's an element of but it's just, these are fun conversations, I think, to recognize how, what could you do with this aspect of your marriage that enhances and keeps this part of the dynamic. Because I think that's really important, which then leads us to what you and I went through, which this is a worksheet, Our Intimate Choices.
Yeah.
It came out in 2007, actually.
Okay.
And so it's been around a while. I was introduced to it early on in the beginning years of Sexy Marriage Radio.
Mm-hmm.
And we've referenced it several times, but you and I have actually never worked through this.
Yeah, not until now. And I think you made a comment that someone in the academy,
someone in the nation, actually just posted this as a link, and we'll repost the link to it on the show notes today. So
kind of ironic that that couple had just gone through it, but I mean it's a really cool communication tool that it starts out. It's really to facilitate conversation between the spouses, right? And their very first section is establishing boundaries. Where's each of you do these separately. You don't sit there and fill it out together. You do it separately, so you're just working from here's where I am. And then you come together and chat about it. And it gives you some good guidelines behind that. But I love the starting out with just establishing boundaries to figure out where's kind of our lines in the sand But there might be some things in here that you never thought about or never thought about actually ever discussing with your spouse. So it kind of puts some clarity out there.
Absolutely. And one of the big caveats that I think is worth noting about the entirety of how they approach this is the very beginning of it. When you're talking about boundaries, it incorporates your boundaries as it pertains to your faith and your moral structure.
Right.
It's not just comfort level.
But they take into account both.
Absolutely, they do. But there's a lot of things I've come across that are designed like this, but they don't incorporate morality as far as a biblical framework or a character that's based in something spiritual. It's more of just would you be comfortable with this act or not? Which obviously I think most of our morals comes into the equation of how we define what I'm going to be comfortable doing or not. But this makes you actually look at some of the different acts and decide, is this okay with my moral belief?
Which I think comes into play real importantly when two spouses are trying to figure out what am I okay doing? And maybe I haven't thought through why is it that I'm uncomfortable with it.
Right.
Maybe I haven't been able to put to paper why that is. And I think this kind of helps define that and helps give clarity to your spouse too, to maybe deal with things better.
Absolutely.
Right. So you're setting the boundaries, and then you're just going in and talking about preferences, whether it be, foreplay, general things. They walk you through all kinds of scenarios where you talk about specifics. How do I want certain aspects of my body touched? Do I not? And and then you come together and you compare the two.
Right.
And there's encouragement in the directions of, no judging on this. If you can ask questions.
Great point to that they have at the very beginning of their instructions.
Yeah.
Of when you have this conversation, it's a judgment-free zone initially.
Yeah, because you can imagine if you're judged on something, your spouse is going to shut down right
Absolutely.
away. And so the conversation's going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's asking those questions. Okay, help me understand more about this. And you can dive into that a little more. This is the time just to figure things out, not to say, this is the end of the line for us.
Right.
I don't know. I wasn't sure where to go with that word.
No, I get you.
So it's a great tool to go from there. Do you want to just jump into details of it?
A couple things I would add to it, just because it's really designed. This is my takeaway of overall of how I would view this experience. It's really designed to help us learn what are the differences as we have defined them, rather than keeping them as kind of this ethereal thing out there that we can't clearly define. We just know, well, she's not going to like that, but we've never specifically said, are you okay with this or not? Like the actual defined act or body part or role or word. I mean, because there's even a section in there, what words are you comfortable with as it pertains to body parts,
right?
And not what's what's on board and not. And so it's really the way this hit me, Pam, was this was a easy structure to start just walking through as we did this here's what I put for these answers. And anything we were different on, we defined it on what the difference actually was.
Yeah.
Right. You answered A here. I answered C. Huh. Okay.
Why is that?
What's that about? Where's that come from? And then you can clarify, because obviously some of these different wordings of things, we would light spanking. What does that even mean? Your definition of it could be different than what my definition of it is. Right. And so it's getting clarity of the differences here is what makes this such a powerful tool, because now I realize what is the real gap and what isn't. I thought was a gap, but it really is not much of a gap. Okay. Yeah. So that was the first thing that jumped out to me, was just recognizing this is a really good way to clarify. Yeah, we're on board with this, and no, we're not really as much as I thought here. Or, I mean, one of the big things that jumped out to me, and I'm not giving away details because it's just between you and I, is a couple of ones that I was like, I didn't think she'd be interested, but she's saying she is. Maybe I need to test that out. see if she's bluffing. You
I wasn't bluffing.
know?
I didn't do any bluffing on this.
I would believe you. But that's some of the stuff that jumped out to me was the importance of this being, it helps give us a better, more succinct language as it pertains to this intimate act of our life.
Mhm.
Because every single human being is going to come at this aspect of their life with some levels of anxiety and trepidation at times,
Mhm.
because we have an accurate enough map to know, oh, they want to do that. Oh, they want, and it's usually based off of something that I extrapolated from some truth,
Sure.
because there was some thought way back that was shared, or some reaction that happened years and years ago.
Or truth in your mind, because that's how you read and experienced
Well,
before.
and even back then, though, I mean, because we've got 30 years together with this as at the time of this recording. And so the first 10, we didn't really know. I mean, on that, I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew how to make sex happen and what it was about, but I didn't know the depth and the intricacies of it. And
First
so I
15 years for me on that.
So fair enough. Maybe I was being generous with my knowledge on the 10-year note, but it's recognizing I would read you and I can still have Pam 1.0 going on in my head as I approach Pam 6.0 here at the end of 2023.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's realizing this gives a clarity of, man, I'm still way behind on some of these. And that's incredibly beneficial, because I think a lot of people, higher desires, let me speak for them. I think higher desires can have a lot of trepidation of, how do I even bring these subjects up to get clarification? But I'm curious, as lower desires, would you think that this is something like, oh, now I'm just going to be asked to do more? Or I think this can be something really beneficial to help it realize, now I can get a real clear distinction of, here's what I am comfortable with, here's what I'm not.
No, for me it was the latter. It's, here's what I'm comfortable with, and going through this, we have that. We've always said higher desire, low desire. One's not better than the other,
right?
But there's still that I'm the lower desire and kind of feeling inferior. And as I'm feeling this out, I'm like, I'm pretty good here. Yeah, like it's, hey, I'm into pretty much all the same stuff you are. Right? It's not that again, it goes back to it's not that there's no desire, it's just lower compared to you. And there's a lot of good things on here. It gave me more confidence, I would say.
Perfect. So any other things that kind of jumped out to you that were like, wow, that really helped me and us? Like, I'm not trying to get into the specifics of, hey, what'd you answer for question 6? We're not doing that, because I think that's what makes that's where we come with Sexy Marriage Radio, and the sacredness of married sex is a secret life between you and your spouse, a secret language between you and your spouse. It's something you only share with you and your spouse. And so there's an element of, I think, elegance with this that helps round out the narrative in there. So that's the encouragement we'd have for a lot of couples, is use this as a springboard into a better framing of this aspect of your marriage. But I'm curious, as you went through this, and we went through this together, because this is where it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure how this equates to members of the nation, particularly ones that maybe just now are finding. They may not. One of the things I come across a lot as a therapist is, I can do this with my spouse, but we don't talk about this. And so even just getting to
I can
that
do sex
point,
with my spouse,
we have
but
sex.
I don't talk about
we have
sex,
but we don't talk about likes, don't likes, all of that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the power of this, is it gives a framework to test it out. But I'm also curious, from your standpoint, what anything stood out to you of the exercise as a whole, or was surprising to you, other than your statement of, well, we're a whole lot more on the same page than maybe I even thought.
Well, I think it's funny because, here we are, we have this podcast together. And so there's a lot of things that we talk about anyway, but walking through this, and walking through specifics of the act, specifics of foreplay that you like or don't like, specifics of where touches that you don't like or don't like, specifics of what turns you on or doesn't turn you on. And it's not that we've ever gone through and had this checklist to get really more clarity on where I am, more clarity on where you are, and to understand you more in that regard. And really, in our situation, it was more for me a confirmation of, okay, we're really in step in this, and I really liked that. That was
that is good.
That was a build for me. I think it just brings connection with us talking. So those are kind of the standouts to me of, it was much easier than I thought it was going to be, as far as not uncomfortable.
Right.
And, I just felt a connection just by walking through and seeing that we're getting more on the same page.
And we even started the conversation with this while heading to go fill up one of the cars, so we were just driving, having this conversation to start it. So
yeah, I mean, it doesn't.
So it could be a very casual. It doesn't have to be a very intense thing. But here's the two things that jumped out to me. One is answering these questions now at 52 years old versus what answers would I have had at 32 or 22 when we first got married, because that's how old I was. On one of the questions being, when you touch me, fill in the blank, I'm instantly ready for sex. I'm like, I don't know if anything nowadays gets me instantly ready for sex, because I'm 52.
It takes some build up.
I need a little more time. But when I was 22, you could have just looked at me and it might have gone, right, let's go right now.
Right,
but
exactly.
So that was one. It's just kind of funny to think of, because again, that's the old map. That I can get to where it's like, well, hold on, that used to, and now what's wrong with me? And I start pity partying and, everything's ruined, and blah, rather than, wait, hold on a second. There's a different thing going on here. I'm a different person, so I need to adjust as well. But then the other thing that jumped out to me, and this is just me personalizing it with you, because I'm looking at my answers on some of these, where on one of the sections, I actually didn't even answer the individual lines. I just wrote yes real big on the outside.
I like all of these.
Right. And so it's like one of my questions that I ponder from that, of just looking back at that and reflecting while we were talking, is that actually a good thing for me or not? Do I need to
just say yes to all?
If I'm too broad on, everything goes, does it make anything really, really special then? It's just, it's a thought process I'm going through.
Okay.
Because I'm also wondering, am I too easy to read? Because if you read me all the time as, he's going to be ready for anything, anytime, when no, that's not necessarily always true. And so
I think you're being hard on yourself there.
Well, I get it, but I
like that you're thoughtful.
But that's the exercise that I'm using from this, as somebody that's been doing a podcast on this subject for over 12 years.
Yeah.
I think there's still benefit to look at what's the uniqueness, what's the sophistication, what's the narrowness of what do things really, really mean versus is it just an act in and of itself? Mm-hmm. Because we've said this before, and I'll say it again just for the sake of the audience and the nation. There is a huge difference between quantity of sex in my mind versus quality of sex in my mind. Mm-hmm. And quality is usually less defined by what we actually do.
Yeah.
It's who we are in the doing it. It's the both being engaged. It's the power play between us. It's the spiritual realm that's a part of it. It's the otherness and the selfishness that's a part of it. It's, there's a whole lot more of following a connection. That's what I think makes the blessed few levels of sex, because I think, as Schnarch would term it, when you're talking about blessed few, that's not about what they do or don't do. It's who they are as people in the doing and don't doing, right? It's the recovering well. And that's the stuff that jumps out to me, is to look at it as, okay, this is a fantastic, let me give you a frame, but I'm wondering, do I need to refine my frame a little bit too? Just to be cleaner on it, because what I had attached to it long ago may not be what it is now. And I need to do that work to examine that, so you can update your map of me, just like I'm trying to update my map of you. Mm-hmm. Anything else jump out before we head
No,
on
no,
back
no.
and practice some of these things?